The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those Super Bowl champions a couple of years ago under Tom Brady, the Brady era for both the Buccaneers and the NFL is over and has set sail, I think. I'm not completely sure. He likes to come out of retirement sometimes. But the Buccaneers are moving on from the Brady era, and a new era is to take shape. And so, are we still looking at a similar Buccaneers team, or kind of similar Buccaneers team, or are we seeing a shell of itself? And for fantasy football, is this team a reliable option for fantasy goers? Let's find out. Hello everyone, my name is Aaron and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Team Review. In this series, we take a look at each and every 32 NFL franchises to see what they offer for fantasy football. We analyze the team's quarterback, running back, wide receiver 1 and 2, tight end, and kicker. Our goal is to analyze last season and see if these players are worth drafting, and if so, when and where. Today, we analyze the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield, Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. Unfortunately, one of the most clowned on players in the NFL is taking the place of Tom Brady, and that is Baker Mayfield. Now, I'm not a Baker hater. I'm not really a big fan of Baker either, but guys, come on. He's still a pretty good quarterback, and he can lead teams. Now, he's only been to one playoff appearance. He's been in 2 playoff games, though. And ever since then, he hasn't had a lot of noise being said about him. But last season, he played 12 games for both the Panthers and the Rams. And in those 12 games, he had 201 completions, which was 28th. He had 335 attempts, which is 24th. And 60% of his passes made, that's 45th. He had 2,163 passing yards, that's 29th, 10 touchdowns, that's tied for 31st, and 8 interceptions, that's tied for 91st. I gave him 134 total fantasy points, which was 30th, so didn't really do very well last year. So I have a lot of skeptical things about him, but I still think he can lead Tampa Bay. He just needs to settle in and not try to do all the crazy things. Deal is, he's not in my top 25, so he's not somebody I would draft. And if you draft him, I believe he is a late round quarterback too, somewhere in the 13 to 16 rounds. Probably a big free agency pickup. Other than that, like, there's not much you can really say about him. So yeah, he's not somebody who I'd be very excited about drafting, but don't clown on him too hard. Rachaad White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back. So, Fournette and Bernard, gone. The running back core has also changed along with the quarterback core, and now Rachaad White takes over. Rachaad White is a pretty good dual threat running back, and he is somebody who I'd be a little intrigued with. In 17 games, he had 129 carries, which was tied for 38th, 481 rushing yards, which is 47th, along with 1 touchdown that's tied for 87th. But he also had 50 receptions, which was tied for 76th, 290 receiving yards, which was 156th, and 2 touchdowns that's tied for 111th. I gave him 128 total fantasy points, which was 36th, though all of his stats, the fantasy points end up coming into the top 40, which is great for him. It means he's in the list, so that's good. He played pretty well last year for not getting a lot of reps, unlike players like Leonard Fournette, who are now gone. And because he was able to get the reps that he did, he's clearly going to get better. There's no questions about that. However, I don't have him super high on the list. He is 38th among all running backs, but that's in the top 40, so he is somebody I would draft as a running back 4. I need to see a little bit more from him, and I see him being drafted in like rounds 9 through 14. So I do believe that he will get better and he will rise in the ranks, I think. But I would hope that the Buccaneers be able to establish the run game because that's something they did struggle with last year. So let's see what they're able to do this year with him. Mike Evans, Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver 1. Though the backfield has gotten some changes, there's not many changes to the wide receiver core, and it's still one of the most explosive cores in the NFL. So let's start with Mike Evans. Mike Evans is, without introduction, he's one of the best receivers in the league, and along with the best core, he produces year in and year out. Even when it was under anybody else but Brady, he still produced. Let's take a look at his stats from last season. He played 15 games last year and he had 77 receptions, that's tied for 25th, along with 1,124 receiving yards, that's 13th, 6 touchdowns, that's tied for 24th, and 220 total fantasy points, that's tied for 15th, all under Tom Brady, by the way. He's still producing big time numbers and he will continue to do so. If Baker Mayfield is to have some success at Tampa, he's going to really need some help from Mike Evans. At the moment, Mike Evans on my list is ranked 21st, so he is somebody I would draft as a wide receiver 2 or 3. I don't think he's no longer in that 1 category. I just think there's much better options at this point. And I believe that with Evans, he would be drafted in like rounds 5 through 9. So he's still a solid draft pick and great trade prospect. I've used him in trades before and they've worked out. So yeah, be sure to keep an eye on Evans. Mid-round, he's a great pickup, so yeah. Chris Godwin, Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver 2. And then the other side of that wide receiver core is Chris Godwin. Godwin has always been a great wide receiver too, and I think he's going to continue being that. He still put up some pretty good numbers last season. Last year, Godwin played 15 games, and in those 15 games, he had 104 receptions, which was 8th, along with 1,023 receiving yards, that's 21st, so both receivers had over 1,000 yards. Go figure. He had 3 touchdowns, which was tied for 72nd, and he had 219 total fantasy points. That was 18th among all receivers, so both him and Evans were in the top 20. But because, they're switching over to a new quarterback, that's why the rankings for both are pretty low. So while Evans is at 21st, Chris Godwin on my list is down to 37th. So yeah, it's going to take 1 year before I'll push him back up. But I just think with this shift, this year might be a little bit trickier to rank him. But I do hope that he does very well. He would be a wide receiver 4 under this idea, and I would see him being drafted as early as 8 and as late as 13th. So yeah, that's all I have for Chris Godwin. Now it's time to move on to the tight end. Cade Otton, Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end. So Cade is coming off his rookie season, which he played pretty well in. He did better statistically than Kyle Pitts, which we'll get to in just a second. And he's going to be potentially a big role for this offense going forward. Last year, he played 16 games. And in those 16 games, he had 42 receptions, which was tied for 93rd, along with 391 receiving yards, which was 122nd, and 2 touchdowns, that's tied for 111th. He had 86 total fantasy points, that's tied for 26. So, though out of the top 20 in scoring, you can tell that first season, he can always get better, and hopefully Baker Mayfield utilizes him pretty well as a pretty good security blanket. But right now, he is not on my top 25 tight ends list. Therefore, he's somebody I would not draft. But I do hope he does get better, and I do hope that he does improve to hopefully become a tight end 2 in the future. But yeah, he's going to have to do a lot of work to help out Baker Mayfield, get settled in that Tampa Bay offense. Chase McLaughlin, Tampa Bay Buccaneers kicker. So the suck-up era is over, and now Chase McLaughlin is going to take the reins as the kicker. Also, talked about Blankenship in that Indianapolis video. Both Indianapolis kickers are now with Tampa Bay, which is pretty interesting. But Chase is the starter at the moment, and last year his stats were really good. With Indianapolis, he played 16 games, and in those 16 games, he was 30 for 36 made and attempted. That's 83.3%. That's tied for 25th. He was 100% from extra point. He had a long of 54, which is tied for 23rd, and he had 111 points. That gave him 129 total fantasy points, which was tied for 13th, which means he had a lot of long kicks over 50. And that's some great news for fantasy goers. They want to see those high numbers and those high kicks. So because of that, I have a high liking for him. He's 9th on my list, which means he is a kicker 1, so he is somebody I would draft. Maybe a high kicker 2, but I see him being drafted as early as round 9 and as late as round 14. And that's because kickers get drafted generally pretty late, but oh well. He looks like he's going to be probably a big deal for Tampa Bay, and with those long kicks, I hope he has many of them and he just increases his number this year. That would just show the offense for Tampa Bay is not missing a beat, and yeah, pretty good for a starter. I can't wait to see what he's able to do with the Buccaneers. And that'll do it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you do, please like, comment down below, and subscribe. The Buccaneers is like an interesting team for me because back when I was doing like the Cowboys, the Eagles, and all those videos, and you saw that different background, I was actually in the Tampa area. And the Buccaneers kind of means a little bit to me because my dad was a volunteer coach for a summer with the Buccaneers before I was born one time, and so the Buccaneers is also a close team in that regard. So it's interesting to see when they become successful, because otherwise the franchise isn't as successful unless it was the great defensive era or the Tom Brady era. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the Buccaneers. The next video will be ending off the NFC South with the New Orleans Saints, and so I'm hoping that you look forward to that video. Also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and that is essentially it. So I hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and goodbye. Peace out.